ever had that feeling? You know the one I'm talking about. You wake up before the sun comes up, you grind all day, you follow every single rule that was laid out for you since you were a kid,
Yeah.
and you try to be the provider, the protector, the good guy, and yet it just feels like the walls are slowly closing in. Like the game is, I don't know, rigged somehow. Like no matter how hard you work, the goalposts keep moving further and further away.
It's a sentiment we're seeing everywhere right now, specifically among men. That sneaking suspicion that it's not just bad luck or a rough patch in the economy,
Yeah.
that maybe, just maybe, there is an actual structural design behind it all.
Exactly. And that is exactly where we are going today. We are taking a really serious, unfiltered look at a source that claims to have the answer key to that rigged game. We are doing a deep dive into the ebook Marxist Matrix, unplugging from the progressive illusion of satanic lies by Conrad Riker.
And deep is definitely the right word here, because Riker has written what you might call, manifesto. It is ultra long, it is incredibly incisive, and frankly, it's fascinating.
It really is.
He's attempting to chart the history of our major institutions, so family, law, education, but looking at them before they were, in his view, captured by specific ideologies. Feminism and Marxism, primarily.
Right. It's definitely not a light read, but man, does it pack a punch.
Yeah.
This deep dive is really designed for the red-pilled man, or honestly, just anyone who is looking around at the modern narrative on masculinity and thinking, something isn't adding up here.
Yeah, he's writing for that specific audience, those men's rights activists and guys in the manosphere who feel alienated. Riker's argument is bold. He says we have shifted from a patriarchy, which, we hear about constantly in the media, to what he calls a gynocracy.
A gynocracy.
Right. A system ruled by and for women. It's a highly controversial take, but the data he marshals to support this is substantial. He's arguing that the whole patriarchy narrative is actually just a smokescreen to hide who really holds the societal leverage.
And I want to remind you as we get into this, we are just the messengers here. We're untagging the book. We're not taking sides, just impartially reporting on Riker's claims. Before we really start unpacking all this, if you want these deep dives to keep coming, you know what to do. Hit that like button right now and make sure you're subscribed. We want to keep bringing you this kind of heavy-hitting analysis.
Absolutely. And one more thing before we jump in. We are going to cover a lot of ground today, but there is simply no substitute for the source material itself.
Definitely not.
If what we discussed today resonates with you, you need to go check Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books and buy Marxist Matrix. You really need to get the full, unfiltered experience for yourself.
Yeah, buy the book, read it. So let's get into the meat of this. The gynocratic takeover. Riker doesn't pull any punches right out of the gate. He says society effectively views men as success objects.
Yes.
We are financial utilities. We are basically ATMs with a pulse.
It connects directly to what he calls the marriage plantation. It's a very provocative metaphor, but he uses it to describe the legal reality of modern marriage. He argues that men are signing a contract where the other party is actually incentivized to break it.
That's the no-fault divorce mechanism he talks about. And this was the part that really stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah.
Because if you look at this purely as a business contract, it's insane.
It is.
One party can end the contract for any reason, or literally no reason at all, and the other party still has to pay out.
And the payout isn't small. Riker highlights the stats to back this up. 97% of alimony payers are men. That is straight from the U.S. Census Bureau.
97%.
It paints a stark picture of wealth transfer. He's saying it's not just about splitting assets you acquire together. It's about a man's future earnings being siphoned off.
He tells this story in the book about Mike from Detroit. Yeah. And this really stuck with me because it feels so grounded. Mike isn't some wealthy hedge fund manager in a suit. He is a roofer and a welder. Hard jobs.
Dangerous jobs. He's doing the physical labor that builds civilization. He's destroying his body, his back, his knees, just to build equity for his family.
Right. And Mike works his hands to the bone for 20 years. He builds a life, saves money, pays off the mortgage, and then divorce happens.
Yeah.
And under this system, his life savings, his home, everything he built from scratch is awarded to an ex-wife.
Yeah.
And the kicker here, she moves a new boyfriend in immediately.
Yeah.
So Mike is effectively subsidizing another man living in the house he built, sleeping in the bedroom he paid for.
Riker argues this isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. It's that ATM reality we talked about. If you strip away the romance and just look at the raw financials, the man is treated like an indentured servant. And it's entirely enforced by the legal system. Which brings us to the Duluth model. This is crucial to understanding Riker's analysis of the courts.
Okay, let's unpack this. The Duluth model. We hear this term thrown around in these circles a lot, but what exactly is it, and why does Riker view it as such a trap for men?
So, the Duluth model is the framework used in many jurisdictions for handling domestic disputes. It was developed back in the early 80s, and Riker argues that it structurally presumes male guilt.
Wow.
It operates on a framework where the man is inherently the aggressor and the woman is the victim, regardless of who actually called the police or what the specific evidence in a given situation actually is.
So it creates a literal guilty until proven innocent dynamic.
Effectively, yes. It views domestic conflict strictly through a lens of patriarchal power and control. So if police arrive at a scene, the training often dictates that the male is the primary aggressor because theoretically he holds the institutional power in society. Riker argues this completely ignores the reality of individual situations.
Right, because you could have a 110-pound man and a violent woman, but the model just sees male and female and assigns the roles accordingly.
Exactly, which is terrifying when you think about it. You could be the one who called for help because you were being attacked, and you end up in cuffs just because of a sociological theory. And he brings up the stats on false accusations, too, to back this up.
Yeah, he cites data from the UK Home Office and the FBI. He suggests that the percentage of rape claims that are provably false is significantly higher than the whole believe all women narrative would have you think.
He does. He argues that the slogan "Believe all women" has effectively weaponized the legal system. It removes the fundamental requirement for evidence. It replaces due process with social bias. He points to the case of Brian Banks to really drive this point home.
Oh, the NFL prospect. That story's just heartbreaking.
It really is. Here was a young man with a bright future, an absolute standout athlete. He was falsely accused of rape by a classmate. He spent years in prison. He was forced to register as a sex offender. His NFL career was over before it even began.
And later, the accuser was caught on tape admitting she made the whole thing up.
Exactly, she admitted it. But the damage was already done. Riker uses this to illustrate that in a gynocentric system, a man's life, his liberty, his potential, it's all disposable compared to a woman's word. Even when that word turns out to be a total fabrication, the system is designed to destroy the man first and maybe ask questions later.
That concept of disposability, it really runs through the whole book. It's not just in the courts. It's in the economy. It's in the workplace. We always hear about the glass ceiling, right? Women struggling to get into the corporate boardroom. But Riker says we need to look down.
The glass cellar.
Exactly. The glass cellar. What's going on down there?
Well, that's where the dirty jobs are, the dangerous ones. The oil rigs, the coal mines, high voltage line repair, sewage treatment plants. Riker cites OSHA statistics showing that 93% of workplace fatalities are men.
93%. That is a staggering number. Almost all workplace deaths are men.
It is, and Riker's point is that there is no push for equality in the coal mines. There's no big diversity initiative to get more women onto deep-sea fishing trawlers during a freezing storm. The push for equality is focused strictly on the comfortable, air-conditioned corporate offices.
It's selective equality. He calls it blatant hypocrisy. He says women want equal pay, but they don't want equal risk. They want the CEO chair, but they don't want the jackhammer. And he brings up the draft, selective service, as the ultimate proof of this.
Right, it's still male only. If the ship is sinking, who goes down with it? If a major war starts, who gets handed a rifle and sent to the front lines by force? Riker argues that society completely relies on male sacrifice to function. We need men to die in wars and in mines just to keep the lights on, but we absolutely refuse to honor or even acknowledge that sacrifice.
And this lack of acknowledgement, this total silence, he connects it to what he calls the health holocaust. This was a really heavy chapter.
Yeah.
It highlights how little society values male life once that utility is gone.
It is very heavy. He contrasts the funding and awareness for breast cancer versus prostate cancer. Both are deadly. Both are highly prevalent. But one has pink ribbons, NFL players wearing pink shoes, massive federal funding, and huge month-long awareness campaigns.
And the other?
Much less so. It's treated as an afterthought.
But the stat that really hit me in the gut was the suicide rate. I knew it was bad out there, but Riker lays it out so starkly.
Men die by suicide at a rate of about 3.5 to 4 times that of women. It's an absolute epidemic. But Riker points out the empathy gap here. If this were happening to women, if women were killing themselves at 4 times the rate of men, there would be national task forces.
Oh, absolutely.
There would be marches in the streets. The president would be giving prime time speeches declaring a national health emergency.
Because it's men.
Because it's men, Often men who have been financially ruined by divorce, alienated from their kids, or lost their jobs. It's just met with silence. Or worse, it's met with victim blaming. It gets labeled as toxic masculinity, as if the men themselves are fundamentally broken rather than the system breaking them.
That phrase, toxic masculinity. Riker really goes after that concept, especially regarding how we treat boys in the school system. It feels like he's describing a systemic dismantling of boyhood itself.
He calls it the war on boys. And this is where we look at the education system. Riker argues that we are actively pathologizing boyhood. Normal boy behavior, like fidgeting, roughhousing, being competitive, drawing tanks or soldiers, it's now treated as a psychological disorder.
He talks about ADHD diagnoses essentially being used to medicate boys into compliance, to make them sit still like the girls do.
Right. The modern classroom environment is tailored for verbal, sedentary learning, which favors girls on average. When boys don't fit that specific mold, when they need to move or learn kinetically, they are drugged. He mentions the Pop-Tart gun incident as a perfect example of this hysteria.
Oh man, I remember that. The little kid who chewed a Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun and got suspended.
That's the one. A literal pastry. A 7-year-old boy. Riker contrasts that level of hysteria, treating a little boy like a violent threat just because of his imagination, with programs like Girls Who Code. You have these massive initiatives funded by billions of corporate dollars to boost girls while simultaneously treating typical male behavior as something dangerous that needs to be stamped out. He argues schools have become deeply hostile environments for young men.
And then they get to college, and it gets even worse. He talks about Title IX tribunals. Now, for you listening who might not know the legal weeds here, Title IX was originally about sports equality, right?
Originally, yes, it was about equal funding for athletics. But it's morphed into a quasi-judicial system for handling sexual misconduct allegations on campus. Riker views universities as re-education champs in this regard. Under Title IX, the due process rights of accused male students are severely diminished. Well, you don't have the beyond a reasonable doubt standard that you have in criminal court. It's preponderance of evidence, which basically means, is it 51% likely?
So a mere accusation can end a young man's entire education and his career prospects without the rigorous evidence standards you'd normally see.
Precisely. And often, the accused isn't even allowed to cross-examine the accuser or even see all the evidence being used against him. It's the total erasure of due process. And Riker adds that it's also the erasure of history. Male achievements are being scrubbed from the curriculum, or historical male figures are being demonized as just dead white men.
It's like if you're a young guy growing up today, where do you look for inspiration? Where are your heroes? If school tells you your very nature is toxic, and history tells you your ancestors were evil oppressors, what's left for you?
Riker would say you definitely won't find validation in modern institutions. He says you have to look to evolutionary biology to understand what's really happening. This is where he pivots to explaining why things are this way. He relies heavily on the work of evolutionary psychologists like David Buss to explain female nature.
This is the red pill science part. He talks about hypergamy. We need to define this clearly because it's really the backbone of his argument on dating and relationships.
Yes, hypergamy. Simply put, it's the biological drive in women to seek status and resources. Women date up and across dominance hierarchies. They generally do not date down. Riker uses the phrase alpha fucks, beta bucks.
Which is, yeah, crude, but let's unpack the operational meaning there.
It describes a dual mating strategy. Biologically, women are attracted to the high-status dominant males, the alphas for good genetic material. That's where the genuine burning desire is. But for long-term security and child-rearing, they settle for the beta males who provide the resources and stability. Riker argues that modern dating apps have laid this dynamic bare for everyone to see.
The Tinder data. I've seen this floating around the internet before, but hearing him break it down is wild.
It's very compelling data. It suggests that women on dating apps swipe right on only the top, say, 4.5% to 10% of men.
So the top 10% of guys are getting basically all the attention. They are the alphas in this digital contest.
Exactly. And here's the real kicker. Women rate something like 80% of men as below average in attractiveness.
Wait, 80% are below average? Mathematically, that doesn't even work. Average means the middle.
Mathematically, yes, it's impossible. But biologically, in terms of female selection strategy, Riker says it's absolute reality. To the female gaze, unless you're at the very top, you are invisible. It creates a dating battlefield where the average guy, the guy following the rules, doing his job, being a nice person, he doesn't even register.
And he points out this massive contradiction in all of this. We have the cultural narrative of the strong, independent woman, right? You don't need a man. But then you look at the family court system we talked about earlier, and it seems entirely designed to enforce dependency.
That's the paradox he highlights. If women are truly independent, why is alimony even necessary? Why does the system force a man to maintain his ex-wife's lifestyle after the relationship ends? He tells the story of a man paying for his ex-wife's yoga instructor boyfriend's lifestyle. The man is essentially an indentured servant to a woman who claims independence but relies entirely on his check to survive.
So what does this all mean for you listening? We've covered a lot of ground, and Riker paints a pretty bleak picture. The courts are rigged against you, schools hate you, your work might kill you, and you can't get a date unless you're in the top 5%. What is the solution here? Is it just despair?
No, and that's the most important part of the book. Riker calls for a red pill revelation. It's not about giving up, it's about waking up. He says the first step is seeing the Matrix for what it actually is, recognizing these structures. But then you have to act.
And his advice is radical. He's not telling you to write your congressman or go hold a protest sign.
No, he proposes a marriage strike manifesto.
Meaning, just don't get married, period.
His logic is cold and economic. He asks, why would you sign a contract where the other party is incentivized to break it and you are penalized for the breach? He views legal marriage as a fundamentally bad business deal for men. The risk-reward ratio is broken, so he advises men to opt out of the legal institution entirely.
But what if you're already in the system, where you want kids? Not every guy wants to be a monk.
Right. So he talks about protective measures, ironclad paternity contracts, though he admits those are very hard to enforce in family court. He talks heavily about asset protection. And this isn't just basic save your money advice, it's about hiding it from the system. Moving assets into trusts, looking at cryptocurrency, using offshore accounts.
Basically making yourself divorce-proof.
Exactly. Avoiding what he calls divorce mining. He's advising men to go into financial stealth mode. If the state wants to take your resources, make sure they can't find them.
It sounds like he's advising men to act like they are operating behind enemy lines.
In a way, he is. He also emphasizes building brotherhood. He argues that male-only spaces have been systematically destroyed or invaded. Think of the Boy Scouts or traditional men's clubs. And men need to rebuild them, not just for hanging out, but for sharing actual skills, legal strategies, and support. Men need to rely on men.
And the ultimate step, the nuclear option.
The exit strategy, you might know it as MGTOW, men going their own way. Riker likens it to going John Galt from Atlas Shrugged. It's the idea of completely removing your labor, your resources, and your participation from a society that inherently dislikes you.
If the game is rigged, just stop playing.
Exactly. If civilization runs on male sacrifice, if it relies on Mike from Detroit to fix the roof and die in the war, and men stop sacrificing, the system collapses. Riker sees this as the only way to force a reset. It's a peaceful, structural withdrawal of consent.
It is a sledgehammer of a book. Marxist Matrix really forces you to look at things differently. Whether you agree with everything or not, the data points he raises, the suicide rates, the workplace deaths, the custody stats, they're hard to ignore.
They are factual realities that often get swept under the rug because they are uncomfortable for the mainstream narrative. Riker just pulls the rug back and lights it on fire.
And that is why we do these deep dives. To look at the things no one else is looking at. To impartially give you the tools to understand the world, even the parts people are afraid to talk about.
Precisely.
So if you want to unplug, if you want to see the data for yourself, and we really only scratched the surface of this massive book here, go get it. Check Amazon Kindle, check Google Playbooks, buy Marxist Matrix by Conrad Riker today. Read it. Form your own conclusions.
And if you want to keep up with Riker's ongoing work, he's very active. You should follow him at Conrad Riker at Substack. That's where all his regular updates are.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We've got more deep dives coming that you won't want to miss. I want to leave you with one final thought, something Riker alludes to that really stuck with me. We talked about the builders, the roofers, the guys keeping the lights on. If civilization was truly built on male sacrifice, what happens when the builders decide to put down their tools and walk away?
That is the question.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.